You can wash off the sin, but the truth, never.
The kitchen clock ticked like a time bomb, each second reminding me that my wife, Elena, should have been home 3 hours ago. But here I was, Cal McIntyre, sitting alone in our suburban paradise, nursing a beer that had gone warm while I waited for my loving spouse to return from her emergency design meeting. Emergency, right. The only emergency here was how quickly my 20-year marriage was circling the drain, and I was apparently the last one to get the memo. I took another sip of the warm Budweiser and surveyed our kitchen. Elena's kitchen, really. She'd redesigned it last year with that minimalist BS that made everything look like a hospital cafeteria. White cabinets, white counters, white everything. Sterile as her excuses lately. "Working late again, honey," she'd texted at 6. "Don't wait up." Don't wait up. Like I was some doddering old fool who couldn't handle staying conscious past 9 p.m. I owned a bar downtown, the Rusty Anchor, and I'd seen more late nights than she'd had hot dinners. But sure, Elena, I'll just shuffle off to bed like a good little husband while you do whatever the heck you're really doing. The front door opened with that familiar squeak I kept meaning to fix. Elena's heels clicked across the hardwood like cracks in the quiet house. "Cal, you still up?" Her voice carried that forced cheerfulness she'd been using lately, like she was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. "In here," I called back, not moving from my spot at the kitchen island. She appeared in the doorway, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Her dark hair was perfect, not a strand out of place despite her stressful meeting. Her makeup was fresh, too fresh for someone who'd been working for 12 hours. The black dress hugged her figure in all the right places, and I couldn't help but wonder who else had noticed. "Sorry I'm so late," she said, avoiding my eyes as she set her purse on the counter. "The Morrison project is ending us. Jack wanted to go over the presentation one more time." Jack Prentice, her new business partner. The guy who'd swooped into her design firm 6 months ago with his trust fund money and his perfectly styled hair. The guy who seemed to require an awful lot of after-hours consultations with my wife. Jack's pretty demanding, isn't he? I kept my voice casual, but I watched her face carefully. A slight flush crept up her neck. "He's thorough. That's why the firm is doing so well. Must be nice having such a dedicated partner." She finally looked at me, and for a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? Then it was gone, replaced by that practiced smile. "I'm exhausted," she said, already heading toward the stairs. "I'm going to shower and go to bed." "Elena." She stopped, her hand on the banister. "Everything okay? You seem different lately." The pause stretched between us like a chasm. When she turned back, her smile was brittle as old paint. "Just work stress. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it is, because Elena used to tell me everything. She used to come home excited about her projects, bouncing ideas off me while I cooked dinner. She used to laugh at my stupid jokes and steal sips of my beer and curl up next to me on the couch while we watched old movies. Now she treated me like a stranger she was politely tolerating. I heard the shower start upstairs and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from my daughter Sophie at college. That was unusual. Sophie was a sophomore at Northwestern, too busy with classes and her social life to call home regularly. I dialed her back. "Dad, finally!" Sophie's voice was tight with worry. "I've been trying to reach you for hours." "Sorry, sweetheart. I was at the bar until closing. What's wrong?" "It's Mom. She's been acting really weird lately. Like really weird." My stomach clenched. Weird how? When I called her yesterday, she was all secretive and jumpy. And she kept mentioning this Jack guy from work. Like constantly. Jack thinks this, and Jack says that. It was bizarre. I closed my eyes. Even our 20-year-old daughter could see what I'd been trying to ignore. And Dad, when I asked if I could come home for the weekend, she got all panicky and said it wasn't a good time. Since when is it not a good time for me to come home? Since your mother started screwing her business partner, I thought, but didn't say. Maybe she's just stressed about work, I offered weakly. Dad? Sophie's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not 12 anymore. Something's wrong, really wrong. After I hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen listening to the shower run upstairs. Elena was up there, washing off another man's touch, and I was down here pretending I didn't know. My phone buzzed with a text from Gina Trellis, Elena's best friend and fellow gossip maven. The message was clearly meant for someone else. OMG, the hotel party was insane. Check out this pic. Attached was a selfie of Gina at what looked like an upscale hotel bar. She was grinning at the camera, drink in hand, but that's not what made my blood run cold. In the background, barely visible, but unmistakably clear, were Elena and Jack Prentice. They were sitting close together in a corner booth, his hand on her thigh, her head thrown back in laughter. Elena was wearing the same black dress she'd just walked in wearing. The timestamp on the photo was 45 minutes ago. I stared at the image until my eyes burned. There it was, in living color. Proof of what I'd suspected but hadn't wanted to face. My wife of 20 years was cheating on me, and apparently everyone knew except the poor bastard husband. The shower was still running upstairs. Elena was probably scrubbing away the evidence, getting ready to slip into bed next to me and pretend she'd been stuck in a conference room all night. I forwarded the photo to myself, then deleted the text thread from my phone. Gina would probably realize her mistake soon enough, but by then it would be too late. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. I needed to see Vern. The Rusty Anchor was officially closed, but I had keys, and Vern Kowalski had a habit of sticking around after hours to help with inventory. What he really did was drink my beer and solve the world's problems from his favorite bar stool. I found him exactly where I expected, perched at the end of the bar like a grizzled owl, working his way through a bottle of Jack Daniels. "Cal," he called out as I walked in. "What brings you back? Thought you'd gone home to the missus." Vernon Kowalski was 63 years old, built like a fire hydrant, and had spent 30 years as a cop before retiring to become my most reliable customer. He had a face like weathered leather, and eyes that missed nothing. If I needed an ally in whatever was coming next, Vern was my guy. "We need to talk," I said, locking the door behind me. Vern took one look at my face and poured me 3 fingers of whiskey. "What's she done now?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo. Vern studied it with the same intensity he'd once used to examine crime scenes. "Well, crap," he said finally. "How long you been suspicious?" "Couple of months, maybe longer. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Paranoid is what keeps you alive, son. Trust your gut." He knocked back his whiskey and poured another. "So what's the plan?" That was Vern. No judgment, no false sympathy, just straight to business. It's why I'd come to him instead of sitting at home feeling sorry for myself. "I need proof. Real proof, not just a background shot in someone else's photo." Vern nodded slowly. "Surveillance? Can you help?" He grinned, and for a moment I could see the cop he used to be. "Son, I've been waiting 20 years for someone to give me a reason to dust off my old skills. When do we start?" Friday morning arrived gray and drizzling, which seemed appropriate for my mood. Elena had already left for work by the time I dragged myself out of bed, leaving behind only the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and a note about working late again. I called in sick to my own bar, the perks of being the owner, and met Vern at a diner downtown. He'd brought what he called his surveillance kit, a pair of binoculars, a camera with a telephoto lens, and a thermos of coffee that could probably dissolve paint. "First rule of surveillance," Vern said, stirring sugar into his coffee, "is patience. Second rule is comfortable shoes. Third rule is an empty bladder." "What's the fourth rule?" "Don't get caught." We positioned ourselves in the parking garage, across from Elena's office building. From the 3rd level, we had a clear view of the street and the entrance to the Meridian Hotel, the same upscale place where Gina had taken her photo. "There," Vern said, pointing through the binoculars. "Silver BMW. That's him, right?" I looked through the camera lens and felt my stomach drop. Jack Prentice was climbing out of his car, looking like he'd stepped off the cover of GQ magazine. Tall, lean, with that carefully tousled hair that probably cost more to maintain than I made in a week. He was carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing the kind of confident smile that made me want to punch something. "That's him," I confirmed. We watched Jack disappear into the hotel. 20 minutes later, Elena appeared on the sidewalk. She looked around nervously before hurrying through the hotel's revolving door. "Bingo," Vern muttered. My hands were shaking as I adjusted the camera focus. This was really happening. My wife was really cheating on me, and I was sitting in a parking garage documenting it like some pathetic private investigator. "You okay?" Vern asked. "Just peachy. Nothing says midlife crisis like watching your wife cheat from a Honda Civic." Vern chuckled. "Could be worse. Could be a minivan." We waited and waited. The drizzle turned into actual rain, drumming against the concrete above us. I tried not to think about what Elena and Jack were doing in that hotel room. I tried not to picture her hands on his body, his mouth on hers, the way she used to look at me when we were young and stupid and thought love would be enough. 2 hours later, they emerged together. Elena's hair was mussed, her lipstick gone. Jack had his hand on the small of her back, possessive and casual. They were laughing about something, and the sound carried across the street like a slap. I started taking pictures. They walked to Jack's BMW, but instead of getting in, they started arguing. I couldn't hear the words, but their body language was clear. Elena was upset about something, gesturing wildly, while Jack kept checking his watch and looking annoyed. Trouble in paradise, Vern observed. The argument escalated. Elena grabbed Jack's arm, but he shook her off and got in his car. She stood there in the rain, looking lost and desperate, as he drove away without her. Son of a witch left her there, I said. What are you going to do? I watched my wife standing alone on the sidewalk, her perfect hair getting soaked, her designer dress clinging to her body. For a moment, I felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the lies, the late nights, the way she'd been treating me like a stranger in my own house. I'm going to make Jack Prentice's day a little worse, I said. We followed his BMW to an upscale apartment complex in the Arts District. Jack parked in his assigned spot and headed for the elevator, apparently having forgotten all about the woman he'd just abandoned in the rain. I waited until he disappeared into the building, then walked over to his car. It was a beautiful machine, pristine silver paint, leather interior, probably cost more than I made in 6 months. The kind of car that screamed, "I'm better than you," to everyone who saw it. I pulled out my pocket knife and knelt beside the rear tire. You sure about this? Vern asked, keeping watch. I'm sure. The knife slid into the tire with a satisfying hiss. I did the same to the front tire on the driver's side, then pulled out a piece of paper I'd prepared earlier. Hope she's worth the ride, I wrote in block letters, then tucked the note under his windshield wiper. As we walked back to Vern's car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, a sense of control. For too long, I'd been a passive participant in my own life, letting Elena call the shots while I played the role of the oblivious husband. But now I was fighting back. Feel better? Vern asked as we drove away. Actually, yeah, I do. My phone rang as we pulled into traffic. Elena's name appeared on the screen. Cal, thank God, I need a favor. Her voice was strained, almost panicked. What kind of favor? My car won't start, and I'm stuck downtown in the rain. Can you come pick me up? I almost laughed. She was calling me to rescue her from the scene of her infidelity, probably so she could go home and lie to my face about where she'd been. Where are you? I asked. The Meridian Hotel. I was having a meeting with a client. Even now, she couldn't tell the truth. Even standing in the rain, abandoned by her lover, she was still lying to me. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. I found her huddled under the hotel's awning, looking miserable and bedraggled. When she saw my truck, relief flooded her face. Thank you, she said as she climbed into the passenger seat. I don't know what happened to my car. It just died. Maybe you should call Jack, I said casually, and I'm sure he'd be happy to help. The color drained from her face. What? Jack Prentice, your business partner. The one you've been spending so much time with lately. He's busy. Besides, why would I call him when I have you? Because he's the one you're seeing, I thought, but didn't say. Instead, I just nodded and drove home in silence, while Elena fidgeted with her phone and avoided looking at me. That evening, I got a call from Gina Trellis. Cal, hi, it's Gina. Is Elena there? She's in the shower. Can I take a message? Oh, well, I just wanted to apologize for that text last night. I meant to send that photo to my sister, not you. I hope it didn't cause any confusion. Too late for that, I thought. No confusion at all, I said. Looked like a fun party. It was. Elena seemed to be having a great time. She and Jack were... Gina stopped abruptly, as if realizing she was saying too much. She and Jack were what? Nothing, just... They seemed to be enjoying themselves. Anyway, I should go. Tell Elena I called. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about how many people must know about Elena's affair. Gina obviously knew. Probably half the people at Elena's office knew. Heck, maybe even the hotel staff knew. Maybe they had a special rate for cheating spouses. Everyone knew except me, the husband. I was the last one to figure out that my own wife was screwing around, but not anymore. Now I knew, and I had proof, and I was going to make sure Elena and Jack Prentice paid for every lie, every betrayal, every moment they'd made me feel like a fool. The water was still running upstairs. Elena was up there washing off another man's touch, getting ready to slip into bed next to me and pretend everything was normal. I pulled out my phone and started making plans. Saturday morning brought the kind of hangover that felt like divine punishment. Elena had been restless all night, tossing and turning beside me like she was fighting demons in her sleep. Maybe she was. I was nursing my second cup of coffee when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Cal McIntyre?" The voice was male, young, and panicked. "Yeah, who's this?" "This is... Look, you don't know me, but I'm calling about your wife, Elena." My blood went cold. "What about her?" There's been an incident. She's at Mercy General Hospital." The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of traffic lights and racing thoughts. Elena had left the house early, claiming she had a client breakfast. Another lie, obviously. But now something had happened, and some stranger was calling me instead of her precious Jack. I found her in the emergency room, looking small and vulnerable in a hospital gown. Her face was pale, her hair limp with sweat. She looked up when I walked in, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd married 20 years ago, scared, fragile, needing me. Then I remembered the hotel room and the lies, and my sympathy evaporated. "What happened?" I asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "I was having breakfast with a client, and I started feeling dizzy. Then I just collapsed." "What client?" She hesitated just long enough to confirm what I already knew. "A new one. You wouldn't know them." Dr. Patel appeared beside her bed, a serious-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes and no patience for BS. "Mr. McIntyre, I'm Dr. Patel. Your wife had what appears to be a panic attack, complicated by alcohol and possibly other substances. Her blood pressure spiked dangerously high. Other substances? We're still running tests, but it appears she may have mixed alcohol with anxiety medication, a dangerous combination." I looked at Elena, who was staring at her hands. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I just took what Jack gave me. He said it would help me relax." Jack gave her pills. Of course he did. The bastard was sedating my wife on top of everything else. "Where is Jack?" I asked. Elena's face crumpled. "He left. When I collapsed, he left me there. Some stranger called the ambulance." So Jack Prentice was not only a cheating scumbag, he was also a coward. Good to know. Dr. Patel pulled me aside. "Your wife needs rest and observation. But, Mr. McIntyre, I have to ask, is everything okay at home? Panic attacks like this often stem from significant stress or emotional trauma." I almost laughed. Emotional trauma. Yeah, you could say that. "We're going through some marital difficulties," I said. Dr. Patel nodded knowingly. "I see. Well, she'll need support during her recovery, and she should avoid alcohol and any unprescribed medications. I'll make sure she gets what she needs." But as I sat beside Elena's hospital bed, watching her sleep fitfully under the harsh fluorescent lights, I realized I wasn't sure what she needed anymore, or if I cared. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. "Dad, I'm driving down, something's wrong, and I need to see you guys." Great, our daughter was coming home to find her mother in the hospital and her father plotting revenge. This was turning into a real family reunion. Elena woke up as the sun was setting outside her window. She looked around confused, then focused on me. "You stayed," she said, sounding surprised. "Where else would I be? I thought, after what happened, I thought you might..." "Might what, Elena?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly, I almost didn't hear her. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For everything. For lying to you. For..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "For being with Jack Prentice?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Cal, please." "Please what? Please pretend I don't know? Please keep playing the fool while you mess around behind my back?" Tears started rolling down her cheeks. It wasn't supposed to happen. It got complicated. Complicated. I stood up, suddenly unable to sit still. "You know what's complicated, Elena? Explaining to our daughter why her mother is in the hospital because her boyfriend gave her mystery pills. You know what's complicated? Figuring out how to tell people that my wife of 20 years decided I wasn't good enough anymore. That's not what? True, because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty true." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Is everything all right in here?" "Fine," I said. "Just having a conversation with my wife?" Elena was crying harder now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her. She'd made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. "I want a divorce," I said quietly. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Cal, no. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. There's nothing to work through. You cheated. You lied. You chose someone else. It's over. But I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of having me as your safety net while you play house with Jack. But I'm done being your backup plan. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. One more thing, Elena. When Jack abandoned you today, where was the first place you went in your mind? Who did you want to call for help? She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. We both knew. That's the difference between us, I said. When I needed someone, I called a friend. When you needed someone, you called the husband you've been betraying. Think about that. I left her crying in that sterile hospital room and walked out into the cool evening air. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Sophie was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against her beat-up Honda Civic. At 20, she looked like a younger version of Elena, but with my stubborn jaw and no-nonsense attitude. "Dad," she said, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "What the heck is going on?" I told her everything. About the affair, the lies, the hotel room, even about Jack's pills landing Elena in the hospital. Sophie listened without interruption, her face growing harder with each detail. "That son of a witch," she said when I finished. "And Mom, God, Dad, I'm so sorry." "Are you? Because she's still your mother." Sophie looked at me with eyes older than her years. "She's my mother and I love her. But what she did to you, what she did to our family, that's unforgivable. You don't have to choose sides, sweetheart." "Yes, I do, and I choose you." We stood in the parking lot as the hospital lights flickered on around us. My marriage was over, my wife was upstairs crying into her hospital pillow, and my daughter was choosing sides in a war I'd never wanted to fight. But for the first time in months, I wasn't alone. "So what now?" Sophie asked. I thought about Jack Prentice, probably sitting in his fancy apartment, thinking he'd gotten away with it, thinking he could pills my wife, abandon her when things got messy, and face no consequences. He was wrong. "Now," I said, "we make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man Jack Prentice really is." Sunday morning found me and Sophie at the kitchen table, laptops open, coffee growing cold, as we dove into the digital life of Jack Prentice. My daughter, it turned out, had inherited my stubborn streak and Elena's attention to detail, a dangerous combination when focused on revenge. "Okay, so Jack's Instagram is mostly just him posing with expensive things," Sophie said, scrolling through his feed. "Cars, watches, restaurants where the entrees cost more than textbooks." "What about his business accounts?" "More interesting. Look at this." She turned her laptop toward me. "He posts a lot about work meetings and client dinners, but check the timestamps and locations." I studied the screen. Jack had posted a photo from a high-end steakhouse last Tuesday night, tagged as a productive business dinner. But I remembered that night. Elena had told me she was working late on the Morrison project. "Cross-reference this with Mom's calendar," Sophie suggested. Elena kept a shared Google Calendar for family events. I pulled it up and felt my stomach clench. Every single one of Jack's business dinners corresponded with Elena's late nights at the office. "They weren't even trying to hide it," I muttered. "Gets better," Sophie said grimly. "Look at his LinkedIn." Jack's professional profile was a masterpiece of corporate BS. Harvard MBA, previous experience at boutique consulting firms, currently partnering with innovative design agencies to maximize creative potential. "Vague much?" Sophie snorted. "I bet if we dig deeper." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Within an hour, she'd uncovered the truth about Jack Prentice. The Harvard MBA was from a weekend executive program. The boutique consulting firms were shell companies that existed only on paper, and his partnership with Elena's firm appeared to consist entirely of him throwing money around while she did the actual work. "He's a fraud," Sophie said. "A rich boy playing businessman with Daddy's trust fund." My phone rang. Vern's name appeared on the screen. "Cal, you need to get down to the bar. We've got a situation." I found Vern standing outside the Rusty Anchor with two of my regular customers, Mike and Danny. All three men looked pissed off. "What's going on?" I asked. "Your wife's boyfriend stopped by about an hour ago," Mike said. "Started running his mouth about how you were harassing him, slashing his tires like some kind of psycho. He was telling everyone who'd listened that you were having a mental breakdown," Danny added. "Said Elena was scared of you, that you'd been threatening her." My blood ran cold. Jack was trying to flip the narrative, make me look like the villain in this story. He also said Elena was thinking about getting a restraining order, Vern said quietly. Kid, we need to be smart about this. If he's building a case that you're unstable, I understood immediately. In a divorce, perception was everything. If Jack could paint me as a harmful, unstable husband, Elena could take everything. The house, half the bar, maybe even limit my access to Sophie. Where is he now? I asked. Left about 20 minutes ago, but Cal... Vern put a hand on my shoulder. Be careful, this guy's playing chess while you're playing checkers. I drove to Jack's apartment complex, but his BMW wasn't in its assigned spot. Probably getting his tires fixed and planning his next move. I was about to leave when I spotted a familiar figure walking toward the building. It was a young woman, maybe 25, with platinum blonde hair and the kind of clothes that cost more than most people's rent. She was carrying herself like someone who owned the world, but her face was twisted with anger. I rolled down my window. Excuse me, are you here to see Jack Prentice? She stopped and looked at me suspiciously. Who's asking? Someone who's had some recent problems with Mr. Prentice. You look like you might be having similar issues. Her laugh was bitter. Issues, that's one way to put it. She walked over to my truck. I'm Madison Cross, and you are? Cal McIntyre. Jack's been having an affair with my wife. Madison's perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. Your wife? That's interesting. He told me he was single. Of course he did. How long have you known Jack? I asked. 6 months. We were engaged until last week when I found out about his little side business. Side business? Madison pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots. Bank transfers, credit card statements, receipts for expensive gifts, all funded by something called Meridian Consulting LLC. That's Elena's company, I said, recognizing the name from her business cards. Exactly. Your husband has been using his girlfriend's business as his personal piggy bank. Designer clothes, fancy dinners, even my engagement ring, all paid for with her money. The pieces clicked into place. Jack wasn't just cheating with Elena, he was using her, draining her business dry while she thought she was in love. What are you planning to do about it? I asked. Madison's smile was sharp as a blade. Well, I was just going to key his car and move on. But now that I know he's been playing both of us, she looked thoughtful. Maybe we can help each other. We sat in my truck for the next hour, sharing information and building a plan. Madison, it turned out, was an influencer with nearly 1 million followers on social media. She specialized in exposing cheating boyfriends and financial fraudsters, and she had screenshots of everything. The beauty of dating a narcissist, she explained, is that they document everything. Jack sent me photos from all his dates with your wife, thinking he was making me jealous. Instead, he was building evidence against himself. She showed me the photos. Jack and Elena at expensive restaurants, Jack and Elena at art galleries, Jack and Elena in what was clearly a hotel room, both of them half-dressed and laughing. I can post all of this, Madison said. Tag Elena's business, Jack's LinkedIn, maybe throw in some screenshots of the financial records. By tomorrow morning, everyone in your city will know exactly what kind of people they are. What do you want in return? Nothing. I want Jack Prentice to pay for what he did to both of us, and honestly, ruining a cheater's life is kind of my specialty. I thought about Elena, still in the hospital, probably wondering if I was going to forgive her and take her back. I thought about Jack spreading lies about me to anyone who would listen. I thought about 20 years of marriage going up in flames because my wife decided she deserved better. Do it, I said. Madison's fingers were already flying across her phone screen. This is going to be fun. As I drove home, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Madison worked fast. She'd already posted the first round of evidence, and people were sharing it like wildfire. By the time I pulled into my driveway, Elena McIntyre and Jack Prentice were trending topics on local social media. The comments were brutal. Isn't this the woman who designed my friend's kitchen? Guess she's good at more than interior decorating. Jack Prentice is a fraud and a cheater. Ladies, avoid this loser. Feel sorry for the husband. 20 years of marriage down the drain. Sophie met me at the door, her laptop in her hands and a grim smile on her face. Dad, she said, you need to see this. It's everywhere. The story was spreading beyond social media. Local blogs were picking it up. Someone had created a fake Yelp page for Elena McIntyre Home Wrecking Services. Jack's LinkedIn profile was being bombarded with comments about his creative financing methods. It's beautiful, Sophie said. They're both getting destroyed online. But I wasn't feeling victorious. I was thinking about Elena, alone in that hospital bed, probably just now discovering that her private shame had become public entertainment. My phone rang, Elena's name on the screen. Cal? Her voice was small, broken. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Elena. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your choices. Everyone knows. The nurses are looking at me like I'm some kind of monster. Aren't you? Silence on the other end of the line. Please, she whispered finally. Make it stop. I can't make it stop. This is what happens when you blow up your life. The pieces don't just disappear. They scatter everywhere, and everyone gets to see what you really are. I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow, Elena would be discharged from the hospital into a world where everyone knew her secrets. Jack would wake up to find his reputation in ruins and his business prospects destroyed. And I would start building a new life from the ashes of my old one. But first, I had one more thing to take care of. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. By 8 a.m., my phone had 37 missed calls, 23 text messages, and enough social media notifications to crash a small server. Madison Cross had done her job well, maybe too well. Elena's design firm, Meridian Creative, was getting review bombed on every platform that allowed customer feedback. Someone had created a meme using Elena's professional headshot with the caption, "Home Wrecker, now available for hire." Jack's BMW had been egged sometime during the night, and a video of him scraping yoke off his windshield was making the rounds on TikTok. Jesus, Dad, Sophie said, scrolling through her phone over breakfast. This is bigger than that politician who got caught with his intern. I should have felt satisfied. This was what I'd wanted. Public humiliation, consequences for their actions, proof that cheating on your spouse of 20 years wasn't a victimless crime. But watching Elena's life implode in real time felt less like justice and more like watching a building collapse with people still inside. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. McIntyre, this is Rebecca Chen from Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about the situation with your wife and her business partner. No comment, I said, hanging up immediately. The phone rang again. Different reporter, same request. Then another, and another. Dad, you're famous, Sophie said, showing me her laptop screen. Look. Someone had found our wedding photo from 20 years ago and posted it alongside the hotel pictures of Elena and Jack. The contrast was stark. Young Elena in her white dress, radiant with happiness, standing next to me in my rented tux, both of us looking like we believed in forever, and then Elena now, older, harder, caught in the act of destroying everything we'd built together. The caption read, "From I do to I did him too, local marriage implodes spectacularly." That's not funny, I said, but Sophie was already moving on to the next post. Oh crap, Dad, look at this. She'd found Jack's response to the social media storm. He'd posted a long, rambling statement on his Instagram, claiming he was the victim of a coordinated harassment campaign by an unstable individual. He painted himself as an innocent businessman who'd been trying to help a troubled marriage, only to be attacked by a jealous husband with anger management issues. He's trying to flip the script, Sophie observed, make himself look like the good guy. But the comments on his post told a different story. Madison had rallied her followers, and they were eviscerating Jack with surgical precision. Every lie in his statement was being fact-checked and debunked in real time. Screenshots of his financial records were being shared alongside photos of him abandoning Elena at the hospital. Nobody's buying it, Sophie said with satisfaction. He's done. At noon, I drove to Meridian Creative's office building. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I wanted to see the aftermath firsthand. Maybe I was hoping to run into Jack and finish what we'd started. What I found was a circus. News vans lined the street. Reporters with cameras were interviewing random passersby about their opinions on infidelity and social media justice. Someone had taped printouts of Elena and Jack's photos to the building's glass doors, along with a handwritten sign that read, "Home Wreckers work here." I parked across the street and watched the chaos unfold. Employees were leaving the building in small groups, heads down, trying to avoid the cameras. I recognized a few of them from Elena's company parties. Good people who were now dealing with the fallout from their boss's personal drama. Then I saw him. Jack Prentice emerged from a black SUV, flanked by two men in expensive suits who screamed "Crisis Management Team." He was trying to project confidence, but I could see the strain around his eyes, the way his hands shook slightly as he adjusted his tie. The reporters swarmed him like sharks sensing blood. Mr. Prentice! Is it true you've been embezzling money from Ms. McIntyre's business? Jack, how do you respond to allegations that you provided illegal pills to Elena McIntyre? Mr. Prentice, what's your reaction to Madison Cross's claims about your engagement fraud? Jack held up his hands, trying to restore order. I'll be making a statement shortly. Right now, I'm focused on supporting my business partner through this difficult time. Business partner? Even now, he couldn't admit what everyone already knew. One of the reporters, a sharp-looking woman with silver hair, wasn't buying it. Mr. Prentice, we have photos of you leaving Ms. McIntyre alone outside Mercy General Hospital after she collapsed. How do you justify abandoning someone you claim to care about? Jack's composure cracked. That's taken out of context. There were business obligations. What business obligations were more important than making sure your partner received medical care? Jack looked around desperately, probably searching for an escape route. Instead, his eyes found mine across the street. For a moment, we stared at each other through the chaos of reporters and cameras. I smiled and gave him a small wave. Jack's face went white. He said something to his crisis management team, then pushed through the crowd toward the building entrance. But the damage was done. The cameras had caught his panic, his inability to answer basic questions about his behavior. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Watching the news, he's falling apart beautifully. Phase 2. We discussed this yesterday, a coordinated release of the financial documents showing how Jack had been draining Elena's business dry. Madison had the bank records, and I had Elena's business credit card statements from our joint accounts. I was about to text back yes when I saw another familiar figure approaching the building. Elena, she looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore no makeup, and her clothes looked like she'd slept in them. But she was walking with purpose, her jaw set in a way I recognized from 20 years of marriage. She was pissed. Elena pushed through the crowd of reporters, ignoring their shouted questions. She disappeared into the building, and I found myself wondering what she was planning to do. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 20 minutes later, Jack came flying out of the building, literally. He burst through the glass doors like he was being chased by demons, his crisis management team struggling to keep up. Mr. Prentice, what happened in there? No comment, Jack snapped, but his face was flushed, and there was a red mark on his cheek that looked suspiciously like a handprint. Elena had slapped him, in front of witnesses, probably in front of their entire staff. The thought made me grin despite everything. Jack and his team piled into the SUV and sped away, leaving the reporters to speculate about what had transpired inside. But I had a pretty good idea. Elena had finally figured out what everyone else already knew, that Jack Prentice was a user, a fraud, and a coward who would abandon her the moment things got difficult. My phone rang, Elena's number. Cal, can we talk, please? Her voice was different now. Not the pleading, desperate tone from yesterday, but something harder, more resolved. What's there to talk about? I know you probably don't want to see me, but I have something you need to hear. About Jack, about what he did to both of us. I thought about hanging up. I thought about driving home and letting Elena deal with the consequences of her choices alone. But something in her voice stopped me. Where? The hospital cafeteria, 1 hour. I almost said no, but curiosity won out over anger, and I found myself agreeing to meet with the woman who had destroyed our marriage. As I drove away from the media circus, I wondered if Elena was finally ready to tell the truth about what had happened between her and Jack Prentice, and whether it would change anything between us. The hospital cafeteria smelled like disinfectant and reheated vegetables, a combination that made my stomach turn even before I saw Elena sitting alone at a corner table. She looked up when I approached, and I was struck by how much older she seemed than just a few days ago. The confident, polished woman I'd married had been replaced by someone hollow-eyed and fragile. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I sat across from her, keeping my distance. "You said you had something to tell me about Jack." Elena wrapped her hands around a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold an hour ago. "He's been stealing from me, from the business, for months." "I know." She looked up, surprised. "You know? Madison Cross showed me the bank records. Jack's been treating your company like his personal aide." "Madison," Elena's face crumpled. "God, Cal, I've been such an idiot, such a complete fool." Yeah, you have. She flinched at my bluntness, but I was done sugarcoating things for her benefit. He told me he loved me, she continued. He said you didn't appreciate me, that I deserved better. He made me feel special, desired, like I was 25 again. And you believed him. I wanted to believe him. Do you know what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage? I stared at her. Invisible? Elena, I've been trying to connect with you for months. Every time I asked what was wrong, you shut me out. Every time I suggested we do something together, you had work obligations. You made yourself invisible. That's exactly what happened. You checked out of our marriage emotionally, and when Jack Prentice showed up with his trust fund and his smooth talk, you decided I was the problem. Elena was crying now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her. She'd made her choices. What did you want to tell me about Jack? I asked. She wiped her eyes and pulled out her phone. He's been blackmailing me. That got my attention. After I found out about the money, I tried to break things off. I told him I was going to confess everything to you, try to save our marriage. That's when he showed me these. She turned her phone toward me, and I felt sick. The screen showed explicit photos of Elena in what was clearly a hotel room. She was undressed, posed in ways that left nothing to the imagination. He took these without my permission, she said, during our encounters. He said if I tried to leave him or expose what he'd done to the business, he'd send them to everyone. Your friends, Sophie's college friends, my clients. I pushed the phone away. Jesus, Elena. I was trapped. He was draining my company dry, but I couldn't stop him without destroying what was left of my reputation. So I kept lying to you, kept pretending everything was fine while he threatened me. Why didn't you come to me? Because I was ashamed. Because I'd thrown away 20 years of marriage for a man who turned out to be a predator. She was sobbing now, her voice breaking. Because I knew you'd never forgive me, and I was right. I sat back in my chair, processing this new information. Jack wasn't just a cheater and a fraud. He was a blackmailer and a manipulator. The photos on Elena's phone were evidence of serious crimes. Have you gone to the police? And tell them what? That I was having an affair and my boyfriend took intimate pictures? They'll say I consented to the relationship. She was probably right. Proving non-consensual photography would be nearly impossible, especially given their affair. What about the financial stuff? That's fraud. It's complicated. Technically, I authorized most of the transactions. Jack was smart about how he did it. He'd ask for money for business expenses or client development, and I'd approve it because I trusted him. So he gets away with it. Unless, Elena looked at me with desperate hope, unless we work together, you have connections in this town, people who respect you. If we present a united front, show everyone what he really is. I almost laughed. You want me to help you? After everything you've done? Not for me, for justice. For making sure Jack Prentice doesn't do this to anyone else. I thought about Madison Cross, who'd also been manipulated and used by Jack. I thought about the next woman who might fall for his act, who might not be as lucky as Elena in discovering the truth. What are you proposing? We give everything to Madison. All the financial records, the photos, everything. Let her destroy him completely. And what do you get out of it? Elena met my eyes. Nothing. I've already lost everything that mattered. My marriage, my business, my reputation. I just want to make sure he pays for what he did. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-serving motives. But all I saw was genuine remorse and a desire for revenge against the man who'd used her. The divorce still happens, I said. I know. I'm keeping the house and my share of the business assets. I know. And Sophie chooses where her loyalty lies. I won't influence her either way. Elena's face crumpled again. She hates me, doesn't she? She's disappointed. There's a difference. We sat in silence for several minutes. Around us, hospital staff grabbed quick lunches and worried families huddled over coffee. Normal people dealing with normal problems, not the soap opera disaster our lives had become. Okay, I said finally. We'll work together to destroy Jack, but after that, we're done. No reconciliation, no second chances, no friendship. We'll be civil for Sophie's sake, but that's it. Elena nodded, relief flooding her face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. When Madison gets done with Jack Prentice, there won't be anything left of him. I pulled out my phone and called Madison. She answered on the first ring. Cal, perfect timing. I was just putting together the financial expose. This is going to be... I've got more, I interrupted. Much more. Can you meet us at the hospital? Us? Elena's ready to tell the truth, all of it. An hour later, the three of us sat in a quiet corner of the hospital parking garage, while Elena laid out everything. The financial fraud, the blackmail photos, the threats, the way Jack had systematically isolated her from friends and family while bleeding her business dry. Madison recorded everything on her phone, occasionally asking clarifying questions or requesting documentation. Her followers were going to eat this alive. "This is bigger than I thought," Madison said when Elena finished. "This isn't just cheating and financial fraud. This is a pattern of predatory behavior, manipulation, coercion, intimate exploitation." "Can you prove it?" I asked. "With Elena's testimony and the evidence she's provided?" "Absolutely. By the time I'm done, Jack Prentice won't be able to get a job cleaning toilets, let alone running a business." Elena looked exhausted but determined. "When do we start?" Madison smiled, and it was sharp as a knife. "We already have. I've been posting breadcrumbs all day, building anticipation. Tonight, I dropped the nuclear bomb. By tomorrow morning, Jack Prentice will be the most hated man in the city." As we prepared to leave, Elena grabbed my arm. "Cal, I know this doesn't change anything between us, but I need you to know I never stopped loving you. I was just too stupid to remember why that mattered." I looked at her for a long moment. 20 years of marriage, reduced to this, a woman I barely recognized, asking for forgiveness I wasn't sure I could give. "I know," I said finally, "but love wasn't enough, was it?" She let go of my arm and walked away, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Madison watched her go, then turned to me. "You okay?" "I will be, after tomorrow. After tomorrow, Jack Prentice will wish he'd never heard the name McIntyre." As I drove home, I thought about justice and revenge, about the difference between the two and whether it mattered. Jack had manipulated and used both Elena and Madison, destroying lives for his own gratification. He deserved whatever was coming. But I also thought about Elena, alone in her car somewhere, facing a future where everyone knew her secrets and her failures. She'd brought it on herself, but that didn't make it less tragic. Tomorrow, it would all be over. Jack would be destroyed, Elena would face the consequences of her choices, and I would start building a new life from the ashes of my old one. But tonight, I was just tired. Tuesday morning broke gray and cold, matching my mood as I sat in the rusty Anchor with Vern, watching Madison's social media nuclear bomb detonate across the internet. She'd posted everything at midnight, financial records, text message screenshots, Elena's testimony about the blackmail, even security footage from the hotel showing Jack abandoning Elena during her medical emergency. "Jesus Christ," Vern muttered, scrolling through his phone. "This kid doesn't mess around." Madison's post had been shared over 10,000 times in 8 hours. The comments were brutal, creative, and relentless. Someone had created a fake LinkedIn profile for Jack listing his skills as fraud, manipulation, and cowardice. Another person had started a GoFundMe to buy Elena a backbone, though the description made it clear they weren't exactly sympathetic to her either. "Look at this," Vern said, showing me his screen. "Channel 7 is running a special investigation tonight. Trust fund predator, how Jack Prentice destroyed lives for profit." My phone had been ringing all morning. Reporters, friends, even a few customers wanting to know if the bar would be open tonight for what someone had dubbed the Jack Prentice victory party. I turned off the ringer after the 15th call. "You sure you want to be here for this?" Vern asked. "Might get ugly." "It's already ugly. Besides, where else am I going to go?" The truth was, I needed to see this through. For months, I'd been the victim in this story, the cheated on husband, the fool who didn't see what everyone else could see. Today, Jack Prentice was going to learn what happened when you messed with the wrong family. At noon, Sophie burst through the bar's front door, laptop in hand, and fire in her eyes. "Dad, you have to see this. Jack's trying to fight back." She set up her computer on the bar and pulled up Jack's Instagram. He'd posted a video, clearly shot in his apartment, probably by his crisis management team. He was wearing a perfectly pressed shirt, and his most sincere expression, speaking directly to the camera. "I want to address the vicious lies being spread about me," he began. "I'm the victim of a coordinated harassment campaign by a disturbed individual who can't accept that his marriage failed due to his own shortcomings." "Oh, that son of a witch," Vern growled. Jack continued, "Elena McIntyre came to me seeking help with her failing business and her troubled marriage. I tried to provide professional guidance and emotional support, but her husband became increasingly unstable and threatening. When Elena tried to end our professional relationship, he launched this attack on my reputation. He's trying to flip the whole thing, Sophie said. Make himself the victim and you the villain. But the comments on Jack's video told a different story. Madison's followers had found it within minutes of posting, and they were systematically debunking every claim with screenshots and evidence. Nobody's buying it, I observed. Look at the like-to-dislike ratio. The video had been up for 2 hours and had received over 3,000 dislikes, compared to maybe 50 likes. The comments were even more damaging than the dislikes. Dude, we have literal bank records showing you stealing money. Give it up. Madison Cross has receipts for everything. You're done. Imagine being such a narcissist that you think people will believe this obvious How's that Mustang running? Oh wait, it got repossessed. Karma's a witch. My phone rang, Elena's name on the screen. Cal, are you watching this? Jack's video? Yeah, I'm watching. He's making it sound like I seduced him, like I was the one pursuing the relationship. That's not what happened. I know. What do we do? Nothing. Madison's followers are already destroying him in the comments. Sometimes the best move is to let your enemies defeat themselves. But Jack wasn't done. An hour later, he posted another video, this one more desperate. He was claiming that Elena had manipulated him, that she'd threatened to destroy his reputation if he didn't give her money. He even suggested that she'd faked her medical emergency to gain sympathy. Now and he's just pissing people off, Sophie said, reading the comments. Look at this one. Bro, we literally have security footage of you abandoning her at the hospital. What's your next excuse? Aliens made you do it? The afternoon brought a parade of developments. Jack's crisis management team issued a statement distancing themselves from their client. His apartment complex confirmed that he was being evicted for violating the terms of his lease. Someone had found his Tinder profile and screenshot his messages to dozens of women, revealing a pattern of manipulation and financial exploitation. But the coup de grace came at 4 p.m. when Madison posted what she called the final nail in the coffin. It was a video call recording. Apparently, Jack had been stupid enough to try to threaten Madison directly. In the recording, he offered to pay her to delete her posts, then threatened to sue her, then finally resorted to calling her a psychotic witch who was too ugly to get a man without destroying other people's relationships. He called her psychotic and ugly, Sophie said, laughing, on a recorded call. This man has the survival instincts of a lemming. The video went viral immediately. Not just locally, it was being shared across the country as an example of toxic masculinity and predatory behavior. Jack Prentice had become a cautionary tale, a meme, a symbol of everything wrong with entitled rich boys who thought they could buy their way out of consequences. At 6 p.m., I got a call from Detective Landry. Cal, Mike Landry, Metro PD, I wanted to give you a heads up. We've opened an investigation into Jack Prentice based on the evidence that's been made public. Financial fraud, possible intimate coercion, harassment. This is going to get official. What does that mean for Elena? She'll probably have to testify, but given the circumstances, I doubt she'll face charges. Looks like she was as much a victim as anyone. After I hung up, I sat at the bar thinking about justice and revenge, about the difference between legal consequences and social destruction. Jack was about to face both, and it was entirely his own doing. You feel better? Vern asked, refilling my beer. I feel finished, like I can finally move on. The bar started filling up around 7 p.m. Word had spread that this was ground zero for the Jack Prentice victory celebration, and people were coming to show their support. Mike and Danny were there, along with half my regular customers. Even some people I didn't know showed up, drawn by the story that had captivated the entire city. At 8 p.m., Elena walked in. The bar went quiet. Everyone knew who she was, knew her role in the drama that had played out so publicly. But she walked straight to me, ignoring the stares and whispers. I wanted to thank you, she said quietly, for helping me see what Jack really was, for not letting him destroy both of us. You don't need to thank me. You did the right thing in the end. Too late, though. Too late to save us. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. But she was also a stranger now, someone who'd made choices I couldn't forgive or forget. Yeah, I said, too late. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm moving back east, staying with my sister while I figure out what comes next. I wanted to say goodbye. What about Sophie? We talked this afternoon. She's going to stay with you. She said she can't trust me right now, and I don't blame her. Elena reached into her purse and pulled out her wedding ring, setting it on the bar between us. 20 years, she said. 20 years. She turned and walked out of my bar, out of my life into whatever future awaited her. I picked up the ring and slipped it into my pocket, a small piece of gold that had once meant everything and now meant nothing at all. The bar erupted in conversation as soon as she left. People wanted to know what she'd said, how I felt, whether I thought Jack would go to prison, but I wasn't listening anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Jack's been arrested. Financial fraud and harassment charges, thought you'd want to know. I showed the message to Vern and Sophie. They cheered, along with half the bar, when word spread. Jack Prentice had finally faced real consequences for his actions. But I felt empty. Vindicated, maybe, but empty. Dad? Sophie sat down beside me. You okay? I will be. We both will. What happens now? I looked around my bar, filled with friends and neighbors who'd supported me through the worst period of my life. I thought about Elena, driving east toward an uncertain future. I thought about Jack Prentice, sitting in a jail cell, finally understanding that actions have consequences. Now we rebuild, I said. We take what's left and we build something better. Outside, the city went about its business, already moving on to the next scandal, the next drama. But inside the rusty anchor, surrounded by people who cared about me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Jack Prentice had tried to destroy my life, and he'd failed. Elena had betrayed our marriage, and she'd lost everything that mattered. But I was still here, still standing, ready to start over. And that felt like victory enough.